So section 8, in this section we're learning all about the chord numbering system, and this is where it starts to get really interesting. So as I mentioned to you in the last section, we did our C major scale, and I mentioned about a chord scale. Now with any major scale, you can create a chord from every single note in that scale. So for the C major scale, you can go up in chords. Now as it goes, that's a mixture of major and minor chords, and there's even a sneaky little diminished chord in there as well on the B. But all chords are in the same order for every major scale. So that means that when it comes to learning the chords of a scale, it's very easy to do once you know that order. So that's what we're going to learn now. Let's take a look. So we're going to build a chord for every note on the C major scale. So we've got 7 notes to build chords on, and with the C major scale it's nice and easy because it's all the white notes, so we won't be using the black notes at all. We're going to build a chord from the C, the D, the E, the F, the G, the A and the B. Now there's 7 notes in the scale, and the first note of a scale is always called the root note. So we are playing a C major scale, the C will be the root note. If we were playing in a G major scale, the G would be the root note. So whatever scale you're playing in, that's the root note. So we're in C major, so the C is our root note, which would make the D number 2, the E3, the F4, the G5, the A6 and the B7. And then we're back to the root note again, the C. So we're going to build a chord from each one of these notes. Okay, so let's build a chord from the first note of this scale, which is a C. Now we're going to use the first 5 notes. Okay, so our chord is going to be made from these first 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to use number 1, number 3 and number 5. So we're not using 2 and 4. So we're not using our index or ring finger, so you can just hold them up. And as you can see, there's quite a neat little pattern here. All we're doing is missing 1, playing 1, missing 1, playing 1. And this is the first chord, so this is a C chord. We haven't worked out whether this is major or minor yet, but we'll do that at the end. So now we've made a chord from the C, we can do the same for the next note in the scale, which is a D. So let's do the same thing from the D. We're now going to put our thumb on the D, because this is the new root note of this chord. Okay, because this is no longer a scale, this is a chord. So D is now the root note of this chord, and our number 1 thumb is on it. We're going to use the first 5 notes, okay, and we're going to do 1, 3 and 5 again. So our number 1 thumb, our middle finger and our little finger. 1, 3 and 5. We're not using 2 and 4 here, okay? And it's exactly the same pattern as the first chord. This is a D, an F and an A. And all you have to do to move up from the C to the D is just move all your fingers up and down. In a C major scale, it's so simple because all of these chords are going to look exactly the same. So when we move up to the E, we can just move all our fingers up. And then we have our E chord. It's built in the exact same way. We're now on an E. So remember, we're playing chords now, not scales. So I'm on an E, which is the 3rd note of a C major scale. But we're now going to build a chord. So we put our thumb on the E. This is now our root note of this chord. Miss 1, play 1, miss 1, play 1. So we're using 1, 3 and 5. We're not using these 2. So keep your fingers up. And this is an E chord. And again, we'll find out at the end what type of chord this is, whether it's major or minor, because we'll use our big small technique to work that out. So now we're going to move up to the F chord, and easiest way to do this is just to move all our fingers up one. And here we are. And you can do this for all the chords. So the G chord, we'll just move all our fingers up one. For the A chord, we'll move all our fingers up one. And for the B chord, we'll move all of our fingers up one. And we've now created a chord for every single note of the C major scale. And every time we've done this, we've just picked a note from the scale. So when we were on the F, we put our thumb on the F, which became the root note. We knew we were using all the first 5 notes, but we're using 1, 3, and 5. And this was our F. So we can do this from every note. So we can also play a nice chord scale using all of these chords, starting on a C and just moving all the way up, just like you would in your C major scale, except we're moving up the chords, and we can come all the way back down again. These are all the chords of the C major scale, and it's so nice in the C major scale because they all look exactly the same. So now that we know how to play a chord from every single note of the C major scale, we can number them. So the number 1 chord of a C major scale is the C. Number 2 is the D. 3 is the E, 4 is the F, 5 is the G, 6 is the A, and 7 is the B. And then we're back to our number 1 chord on a C. And this C is going to be the number 1 chord no matter whereabouts you play it on the piano. So spend some time just moving up and down all of these chords of the C major scale. I call this a chord scale, and I will add it to your practice, and you're going to find that your little finger is super weak and will start to ache. That just needs strengthening. So if you do this scale every day, that's really going to help strengthen your fingers. So now that we can play a chord for every note of the C major scale, we need to know whether those chords are major or minor. And we do this by using the big small technique. So if we're on our first chord, which is the C chord, we can just count up the half steps to see whether it's a major or minor. So here we are from C, 1, 2, 3, 4, followed by 1, 2, 3 half steps. So that's a major chord. And we learned this in the big small technique. So I know that this is a C major chord, so you can write that down. I want you to pause the video, go through all of the chords of the C major scale and write down whether they're major or minor. And then come back and we can see if you got it right. Okay, so hopefully you did well with that. So this first chord we already knew was a major. The next chord in a C major scale, the number 2 chord, is a D, but is it major or minor? Well, let's count up from the D. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is 3 followed by 4 half steps, so that's a minor chord, so that's a D minor. So let's do the same with the E. Hopefully you worked out that this is also a minor. The F, that's a major, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, followed by 1, 2, 3. The G is a major. The A is a minor, 3 half steps followed by 4 half steps. And the B might have thrown you because it's not a major or a minor. It's a diminished chord, and this is the black sheep of the chord family. We haven't spoken about diminished chords yet, but there's one in every single scale, and it's always the 7th chord of the scale. And this is 3 half steps followed by 3 half steps. So from the B, 1, 2, 3 gets to the D, and 1, 2, 3 gets to the F. 3 followed by 3 half steps is a diminished chord. But what's very interesting about all these chords is the order of major and minors and diminished is the same for every single major scale. So it's always a major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, and then back to that root chord of a C major. And the reason this is important is because when you start switching keys, this will really help you to be able to work out chord progressions. Because in my free video for My Piano Method, I teach the 1-5-6-4 chord progression, and we'll be learning a bit about chord progressions later. But it's just using the numbered chords of the scale. So number 1 in the C major scale is a C, 5 is a G, 6 is an A minor, and 4 is a major, an F major. And this is a very famous chord progression that I teach. Hundreds of songs use it. 1, 5, 6, 4. And when you start understanding that the chords will always be in the same order for each scale, it means you can switch keys very easily when you're playing with other musicians. But that takes practice. It will come a bit later. I do teach you later on a fantastic major scale formula, so you can build a major scale from any note on the piano, which is absolutely fantastic. But I'm going to give you some exercises on this chord numbering this week. And what you've got to remember is you're just building these chords from the major scale. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And the chords are all built in the same way. They're using the first, the third, and the fifth note from the root note. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And using the big small technique, we've worked out the exact order of majors and minors, which will always be the same for every single major scale. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and there's that cheeky diminished, the B diminished, and then we land back on the C. So take some time going through this chord scale and try it with your left hand as well. Okay, so a lot of information there, but that information is gold dust. Now you can build a chord from every note of the major scale. It means you can use them chords when playing in any key. So when I talk about playing in a key, I'm referring to the major scale. So if we're playing in the key of C major, we're going to be using all of the white notes because they're in the C major scale, and we're going to be using all of those chords that are the chord family of that scale. So C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, although we don't use that as much, and then back to the C. And you can then apply this to every single major scale. Now there are 12 major scales to learn, but luckily you don't have to memorize them, because later on in the course I'm going to teach you a superb formula, which means you can build any major scale from any note on the piano and you don't have to memorize. And then of course, once you've done that, you can apply the chords to that scale and voila, you've almost got everything you need to be able to play away. So do follow your practice plan. Please do the exercises as well. And in the next section, we're going to look at making some chord progressions.